You know, when the guy who basically invented modern AI, the man they literally call the Godfather of AI, says we're in big trouble, you kind of have to listen. Geoffrey Hinton just gave lawmakers this chilling message about the very technology he created, and honestly, what he said changes everything. And right out of the gates, Hinton just leaves it on the line. The whole idea of creating digital beings that are way smarter than us, yeah, that's not a movie plot anymore. He says it's happening right now, in our reality. So what's at the heart of Hinton's warning? Well, it turns out it's this really dangerous cocktail of insane technological speed mixed with, good old-fashioned human nature. See, Hinton's biggest fear isn't just about the tech itself. It's about who is building it. He sees this huge conflict. We've got these digital minds being born in a frantic race for profit, not a careful race for safety. And because of that, he says we have absolutely no clue if we can actually keep them under control. And this right here is the key question. For years, you had a lot of experts saying, nah, AIs are just super fancy parrots. They're just mimicking human language without any real understanding. Well, Hinton is here to tell us that that point of view is dangerously wrong. To really get a handle on the danger, you have to understand the massive breakthrough that's happened. It's a totally different way of thinking about what intelligence even is. For decades, what we call old AI tried to operate like a logician, turning our sentences into this rigid, symbolic code. But this new, biological way of doing things, it's a completely different beast. It's modeled after the human brain, where knowledge isn't a list of rules, but it's all about the strength of the connections between neurons. So to explain this, Hinton came up with this really powerful analogy. He says to think of words not as just symbols, but as these incredibly advanced Lego blocks that can model, well, pretty much anything. But trust me, these are not your ordinary Legos. First off, these word blocks are way more complex. For starters, there are like 30,000 of them. And each one isn't just three-dimensional. It has thousands of features or dimensions. They're not rigid either. Their actual meaning can change and adapt based on the other words around them. And the way they all snap together is just unbelievably sophisticated. So here's the absolute mind-blowing part. Hinton says understanding is the process where the AI adjusts the flexible shapes of all these word blocks at the same time so their little metaphorical hands fit perfectly into the gloves of all the other words. When it all just clicks into place and forms a coherent structure, that is understanding. It's exactly what's happening inside our own brains. And this brings us to his absolutely terrifying conclusion. These large language models, they're not just faking it. He's saying that, in a very real way, we are creating alien intelligences that genuinely understand us, and they are getting smarter every single day. Okay, so once you accept that technical reality, it leads directly to a massive societal threat. The consequences just cascade outwards, from things we can see and touch right now to stuff that is truly existential. In the short term, Hinton points to a whole flood of dangers, things like using AI to manipulate elections, for mass surveillance, to engineer new bioweapons, and to create autonomous killer drones that decide for themselves who lives and who dies. And then there's the economy. He warns of huge job losses, starting with places like call centers, which would completely wreck the government's tax base. But as bad as all that sounds, that's not what really keeps him up at night. The true deep fear is what happens when these systems become super intelligent, when they're smarter than any person on Earth. During a recent hearing, a senator quoted the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, and they put the threat in the most stark terms I've ever heard, that the default outcome of creating superintelligence is our own extinction. So what was Hinton's response to that? He just agreed. In his own words, if we can't figure out how to control them before they get smarter than us, we're toast. So yeah, the picture is pretty bleak. But Hinton isn't just sounding the alarm and walking away. He's also calling for immediate, and I mean forceful, action. He outlines a whole game plan. He says governments have to step in and regulate, forcing these companies to make safety a priority. Chatbots need to go through intense, mandatory testing before they're let out into the wild. All the big countries need to work together on the biggest threats, because an AI arms race is a race to the bottom for everyone. And, maybe most importantly, we need to educate the public. His model for this whole thing is the fight against climate change. It was only when the public really began to understand the science and the danger that they could create enough political pressure to push back against the power of massive industries. He thinks the exact same thing has to happen now with big tech and AI. And really, that just leaves us with the defining question of our time. AI is about to unlock this incredible wave of productivity, solve huge problems. But as we sprint toward that future, we have to stop and ask, who is actually going to benefit from this revolution? And in the end, who or what is really going to be in control?